I'm your host, Dan the Roofing Man. This is the Creative Contractor Show. And today we are in a more echoey studio. And why is that? Well, if you've been following me, you know that I'm building a podcast studio in a pod, and I am currently located in an apartment complex that I own with my partners. And we have units that we've already renovated that we're about to lease out, and then we've got units we have not renovated yet, which is where I was located, and we're now moving on to those units. So I had to move the entire studio. So I'm not sure how the lighting's going to be in here. Sounds like there's more of an echo, but I'm actually located in the laundry room. Okay. The LLC that we have here is called Dunlap Flats, and that's the name of the complex when we rebranded it. And I am in what is considered the laundry room. We're actually going to convert this unit into a studio with a bathroom. So there's no AC unit in here yet. There is no windows in here yet, but we needed to, for our blueprints, we had to finish it as designed as a laundry room. And now that we're done and we've passed our inspections and we're updating or finishing the other units and we're renting this out, this is going to be a sixth unit. So I'll get into all the real estate investing I've done in the past and currently in a different episode. But what I'm going to talk about today, actually, I didn't realize, I'm doing this show to help people out, right? And to teach things that I didn't know when I started my company or companies, because I didn't have like a mentor. I didn't even know really what a mentor was. I didn't have a coach. I didn't have anybody to help guide me. I grew up low income, and then I went to college and I have a business degree. But what's funny about college is they don't actually teach you what you need, to be successful in business, right? My degree is global business management and leadership. They definitely didn't teach me how to lead, and they didn't teach me about business. I had a couple accounting classes, a couple finance classes, but if I'm being honest with you, man, everything that I've learned has been from real world experience and not from college. I don't want to discourage people from going to college if that's your dream. It was a dream of mine. I achieved it. But if I had to go back, I don't know that I would. Okay. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Okay. So what I'm going to talk about today is actually how to start your company. Okay. And what I didn't realize, what I was trying to say before, is that a lot of the stuff I've talked about in the episodes is kind of like after you've started. Even if you're just a new business owner, it's assuming that you've created an entity, right? And I talked about in the business of contracting, I got real granular with stuff, and I know that was a long and boring episode, but it's all important, right? But I've had people, like literally today, somebody said, I started an event planning company, right? She was actually the server at the restaurant where I was working on my laptop. And she's like, I started this event planning company, and I've already booked 12 weddings. She's like, but I don't have a business. I'm like, I don't have any of that stuff, and I have no idea how to do it. And I went online and I tried to do it, and I have no idea, right? And so I guess I jumped a few steps ahead, and I just assumed that everybody knew. And so this is probably going to be a pretty quick episode, and it's going to be a refresher for a lot of people, but it's really important. And anybody that you know that is looking to start a business, they can follow these steps, right? And I'm going to share this document online. And it's very specific to Arizona. It's a very specific type of business, but for the most part, the steps will be the same depending on the type of entity you set up. And also the steps will probably be mostly the same in just about any state. And how do I know that? Because I've either admitted my entity or my LLC or my business as a foreign entity into other states, or I have formed LLCs and businesses in other states, and then I've admitted them into Arizona as a foreign entity, right? And that gets a little complicated, and I know that. But all I'm saying is from experience, I know that it's relatively similar in other states when you're forming a business, okay? So first thing is, when you are forming a business, you need to identify the type of business you want to form, okay? Is it going to be a sole proprietorship, which generally speaking means it is not incorporated, okay? That's just a single person that owns a company, or they operate like a company, but they've never actually formed a business. And then there's LLCs, there's corporations, there's different ways of setting those up, okay? What I'm gonna talk about specifically is my business structure that I have in the state of Arizona, okay? What I have is a manager managed LLC, okay? So I actually wrote this document out probably 2 or 3 years ago during COVID. And the reason for that is during COVID, nobody wanted to work, right? They had all this money coming in and we were busier than we've ever been. And so we're really short staffed just because of how busy we were. But on top of that, nobody wanted to work. And so we created this document because I needed to think outside the box on how to recruit people to come work for us as subcontractors. But in order for them to be a subcontractor, they needed to have a business and all this stuff set up, right? So I literally created like a document that I'm gonna share that identifies how to create an Arizona LLC, okay? So I'm gonna follow a lot of this. I might bounce around a little bit, but I am gonna look at this and refer to this because I wanna make sure I'm hitting all these points. And then I'll share that with you so that you guys can just download it and kind of follow the steps. If you're in Arizona, it'll be really easy to do. But if you're in other states, it'll be basically the same thing, okay? So to start a new company, also known as an entity, right? There's a bunch of steps you have to follow. And like any other person that has a podcast, right? We all have these caveats or disclosures we have to, say, right? I'm not an attorney. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a financial planner. You need to make sure that you're following up with those people that you hire that know your situation and make sure that this is the best for you. But this is what I have done, okay? So there's a lot of different, types that you can form, but I'm going to specifically talk about, an Arizona LLC that's manager managed, okay? So first thing you got to do is make sure that you have a name for your company. Okay. Once you have that name that you want to use, you should Google it, search online, make sure that nobody else in Arizona has it or the state that you're in. And then once you kind of confirm that, and anything really that's close to the name that you want, right? You don't want to have like Max Restoration, which is my company, or Max Restoration Services, right? Like it's just too confusing for the consumer and even for your staff and phone numbers. Like you just want to have something completely different, right? So in the state of Arizona, we have the Arizona Corporation Commission, right? I'm not going to tell you the website address, but you can log on. Actually, there's a link in this document. But you need to, once you verify that nobody else has it in Arizona, then go on the Corporation Commission and make sure nobody has registered that name, okay? Now, you can actually reserve a name. Like if you're ready to move forward, then there's no point in reserving a name. But if you're not ready to move forward, then you should go on. And once you've searched for it, you should reserve that name so that when the time comes around for you to actually create the entity, the name is reserved to you. Because if you don't, somebody uses it in the meantime, you basically just did all this work for nothing. You've got to come up with a whole other name, right? So you're going to go to the Corporation Commission website. You're going to have to create a profile, right? You're going to have to start a new corporation, right? And you're going to go through the whole login process. And then at that point, you're going to go to just create a new LLC. Okay, they're going to have a bunch of questions that you're going to have to answer, right? Obviously, Tyler, you're going to edit this. So once you log in, you're going to go in there, you're going to start a new corporation or LLC, okay? And because we're talking about LLCs, that's what we're going to select. When you go to select an LLC, right, there's two different kinds. There's basically a limited liability company or there's like a professional LLC, right? And then that's basically reserved for like doctors, lawyers, real estate agents, professionals that may work for someone else or hang your license with someone else, but they want to actually incorporate because what that does is it separates themselves, helps separate from liability. Now, the reason you want to create an entity is when you start your company, okay, you've got you, the person, and then you've got your company. And you want to separate your assets and your liabilities from one another so that in the event somebody tries to sue you, they're not getting the company. If they try to sue the company, they're not getting you, okay? And you want to make sure that you're not separating or you're not commingling the funds that you use, right? So you don't want to use your business debit card for personal expenses, okay? And vice versa. If you do, you need to make sure that you document that, because if you're using it for personal expenses, you need to document that the business is owed money from you personally. Now, if you're using personal money for business expenses, you got to keep that receipt and document it so that the business can pay you back eventually, right? Especially at the very beginning of starting your company, the company doesn't exist and you're gonna have to use personal money to start it. So when you use those funds, you wanna make sure you're tracking that. Somehow, you probably don't have books yet, but somehow you wanna track that so that when the company actually makes money, let's say they make $2,000 profit, but you've invested $2,000 into the company, you don't wanna pay tax on that $2,000. You wanna take that $2,000 and pay yourself back, which technically means that you've broken even, okay? But you've also returned your initial investment or investments into the company, okay? So what you're gonna do is you're gonna form a limited liability company, okay, within the Arizona Corporation Commission website. At that point, there's like 10 steps you have to follow, okay? First thing you have to do is create your articles of organization, okay? With different types of entities, okay, LLC, corporations, etc. There are different types of articles that you are required to file. Now, with the LLC in Arizona, you're going to create an article of organization, okay? Basically, you're gonna enter the company email address, select the character of business, which in my case, with this company was construction. Whereas other entities I formed, it's real estate. And then there's other ones that have been any legal purpose, okay? I'm not sure why they do it that way. It's probably some type of internal, documenting process or statistical analysis that they do as to the types of businesses you form. But you have to declare that with the state of Arizona, the type of business that you're going to be operating in. And then at that point, right, there's subcodes, and pretty much what I did was all other specialty trade contractors, right? So at that point, you're just going to click next. Literally, I'm going to follow through this, okay? From there, your business the Arizona Corporation Commission requires that your business has what's called a statutory agent. Have you ever heard somebody say, you've been served? Okay. That's what the statutory agent is for, is so that there is an actual physical address for legal documentation to be served to you. It cannot be a PO box. It has to be a person. Now that person can be you. It can be a CPA. It could be an attorney. My company is my attorney. Okay. All my LLC entities, if you go online and you want to serve me, or sue me or whatever, instead of sending it to me, because I'm just going to send it to him anyways, you're going to go to the attorney, right? That's who my statutory agent is. As you go through this process, you're going to have to identify, is your statutory agent yourself, or is it another person, or is it another entity? Mine is an entity, which is the law firm that my attorney owns and works for, okay? So obviously edit this also. So once you've identified your statutory agent, right, you've got to produce an address for the principal, okay? And the principal is going to be an owner or owners, okay? So it may be the same as the statutory agent, okay? It may not, but this information is public, okay? My company, all my subsidiaries are owned by a company called D3 Ventures. Now that is an Arizona company, okay? And so as you kind of go up the chain, eventually you're going to find out that it's owned by my trust. Other people, when they've set up their companies, do not want anybody to know who they are. They're owned anonymously. Arizona doesn't have the ability to own an anonymous corporation, right? As far as being an Arizona-based corporation, there's like 2 states. I think it's Montana and Delaware. So that's why a lot of times you'll see Delaware LLCs own an Arizona company, or they're admitted here and then they own, subsidiaries. But that way you can't track who owns it. Personally, if I could, and I probably will go back and change that, or somehow eventually set that up, because I just don't like people knowing what I have. And there's a lot of nosy people out there. And also there's layers of protection involved when you have separate entities and separate insurance policies, and there's a trust. So there's a lot of benefits to doing it that way. But initially you're going to have to identify who that is. Okay. And if you're brand new to business, most likely it's going to be you, and most likely it's going to be your personal address, and it will be public. Okay. So you just have to understand that. I have a mailing address where pretty much all my mail goes to, and I think that's what they use. But from a statutory agent standpoint, it has to be a physical person and address. I believe the address for the property can be a mailing address. Okay. So once you get into, as you go through these steps, you're going to have to identify the type of structure. Okay. Mine is manager managed. Okay. With the LLC, owners of an LLC in the state of Arizona, and I'm pretty sure that's national, are called members. They're not called owners. They're called members. Okay. Now you can have your LLC member managed, or it can be manager managed. I pretty much always recommend that it's manager managed, because eventually you're going to want somebody to manage your company, right? And if it's member managed, you're basically stuck in that role all the time. Okay. So my recommendation, or at least my experience and what I've done with my companies, is I select the manager managed structure, and then you have to identify the members also. So I select the manager managed structure. Okay. Now your manager can be a member. Okay. And you can have multiple members and only one manager. But if it's manager managed, you have to identify who the manager is and who the members are, even if one of the members is the manager. Okay. Eventually, if you change your manager, you would switch that out to whoever that manager, the new manager is, and then your members or your owners remain the same people. Okay. You have to identify who those people are. And if you have multiple members, my recommendation is that you get with your attorney, and then you have an operating agreement identifying who the members are, what their ownership is, what their responsibility is, have they contributed any capital, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So it's really important that you get that set up from the beginning before you actually form this corporation, because as soon as you form it, it's kind of hard to go back and create all these operating agreements, because it ends up becoming time consuming. Nobody wants to mess with it. Also, there can be an argument, and if you've already set up the company, you're kind of screwed. So my recommendation is to try to get the operating agreement figured out before you actually form the business. So as far as, towards the end, once you're like, it's very easy to go through this process. And some of these questions can be confusing, and it's because you probably haven't had the experience. But if you read through what it's asking you, you could even copy and paste it into Chat GPT, and it will basically put it in layman's terms. You literally can say, I've never set up a business. The Arizona Corporation Commission website says this, copy and paste it. Can you put this in layman's terms so that I understand what I'm actually filling out? Okay. And as you go through it and you get to the very end, if you've made a mistake, they're going to tell you. Okay. They're going to say, hey, look, you selected this, but you actually meant to select this, or you forgot to put this in, or you didn't, this has to be a physical address and not a PO box. Like, there's some checks and balances along the way. Okay. But this is probably the hardest process, is forming the entity. Okay. As you get on, once you've identified the manager and member or members, there's one manager, there can be one or multiple members. Your member can be the same as the manager. Okay. But at the end, you're going to have to identify the organizer. Okay. And so if it's just you just write your name. If your attorney helps you, you write their name. If you paid somebody like myself to help you, you put my name, so that basically they want to make sure that they're pointing to whoever's liable for setting this stuff up. Okay. They're going to hold me to a higher standard than somebody who just opened a business, because I have experience in business. I've done this myself physically. Right. And so they're going to hold me to a higher standard than somebody who's brand new, in the event there's a lawsuit or a mistake or whatever that happens down the line. So you're going to identify whoever the manager was, the organizer, and then you're going to basically go through. So after that, you're going to have some documents you have to upload. There's some signatures you're going to have to do. You're going to have to review it, and then you're going to have the opportunity to pay for it. Okay. With the Arizona Corporation Commission, there's basically 4 options. You can expedite it next day, same day, or 2 hours. And that ranges from $35 to $400. So in Arizona, to form your company, it's going to cost you about $400. Okay. You're going to have to know who your statutory agent is, and that may or may not be yourself. You're going to have to know if it's going to be manager managed or member managed. And I recommend it be manager managed. You're going to have to identify who the manager is. Your manager may or may not be a member. You have to identify all the members that there is, okay? And I recommend getting an operating agreement before you do that. You'll have to identify who the organizer is, and that may or may not be yourself. And then you've got to pay all the fees, okay? And depending on how long it takes you, or whatever you pay for, that will dictate who is going to, or how long it's going to take to actually get the entity formed, okay? So that is forming your entity or your LLC or your business within the state of Arizona as a manager managed LLC, okay? That's how my structure is. That's how I recommend you do yours. Talk to your attorney about that, okay? Some of this other stuff is pretty easy after that point because you're basically taking all this information you've already provided to the state of Arizona and then you're providing it to these other entities, okay? So the next thing you need to do is get your EIN number, which is basically like your social security number for your business, okay? It's a tax ID number. It's an employer identification number, I think is what it's called. That comes from the federal government, okay? When you form a company, you will file taxes for the business and taxes personally. Now, if you are a sole proprietor or a single member LLC, single member, just you, no other members, generally that will end up flowing through and you'll just file one tax return, okay? But the second you have a partnership, or partnerships, or you've got a corporation as opposed to an LLC, then it gets a little more complicated from there. But every entity, just like every person, or at least every American citizen, will need to have its own EIN number, okay? So you're gonna take all this information and you're gonna go to the federal government's website, which it's actually the IRS, okay? Again, I have a link in this document, okay? But according to the IRS, an individual may apply for an EIN online if, number one, the principal business is located within the United States or US territories, okay? Number two, the person applying online has a valid taxpayer identification number, and that could be a social security number or an ITIN, which I'm not sure what that is, or an EIN, okay? That comes right from their website, but they make it really easy. We just formed our corporation online with the Arizona Corporation Commission, and with the federal government, the IRS, we're filing for our EIN online. So you go to the website, you click on apply now. On the next screen, you're gonna click begin application. After that, you're going to select limited liability company, okay? Our company is an LLC. That is what we select, okay? If that's what you're doing, that's what you're gonna select. From there, you're gonna identify how many members there are, the state, which is Arizona. You're gonna click continue on the next screen. Because you're only one person, you're considered a single member LLC, you're gonna click continue, okay? So why is the LLC requesting an EIN, okay? They wanna know, why are you requesting one? It's because you started a new company, okay? I have other companies where I've done a name change and I've had to go online, and I don't wanna change the EIN. It would be like changing my social security number, right? So I will have to go online and send a letter to the IRS and wait for them to respond, where basically I say, look, this is the old company name with this EIN. This is the new company name. I want to keep the same EIN. You have to justify to them. I can't do that online. It makes it really complicated. So figure your name out from the beginning. Make sure it's done right. From experience, I know it can be kind of a headache to go back and change it. Okay. So you're going to authenticate it. Basically, you're going to fill out the responsible party of the LLC information. And then you have to select if you're an owner member, managing member, or if you're a third party. Okay, it's the same thing. For the most part, they're going to ask the same information. Okay, addresses, and then all the details that they're going to want is legal name of the LLC. If you're doing a DBA, okay, at the very beginning when I started my company, Arizona no longer requires that you have to have a roofing license to do roofing. So I knew that I wanted to get a general contracting license. And I went and got a KB1, which is a dual residential commercial, no dollar limit, no scope limit, general contracting license. Then I went to another government agency called the Arizona Secretary of State, and I registered a legal DBA that's called Max Roofing. Okay. Max Roofing was then registered or identified back with the Arizona Corporation Commission. Excuse me. It is on my license with the Arizona Registrar of Contractors. It is on every one of my insurance policies. It is in my contract, okay? Because even though it's the same entity, it's got a legal DBA. I want to make sure that everybody knows that I legally am working under that. I don't want anybody to come down the line and be like, hey, you didn't tell us you were doing roofing, or you didn't tell us you had Max Roofing as part of this. We're not covering this claim, or we're not going to defend you in this lawsuit or whatever. So it's always better to have your T's crossed and your I's dotted. And if you end up getting an EIN, okay, and you have a DBA with the Secretary of State that's registered with everybody, you need to make sure that you tell the federal government that you have that, your DBA as well, okay? They want to know the county, the state, the city, when you started it, all that stuff, okay? They're going to ask you, the industry that you're in, like basically all the same stuff that the Arizona Corporation Commission asked of you, okay? EIN's the same thing. Have all your information together, organize it. I don't care if you're using files still. I use everything in the cloud, and I create a file for every one of my entities. It's got all my bank account information. It's got all my EIN stuff, all my Corporation Commission stuff, all my contracts and my insurance policies and everything. Get organized from the beginning. Okay, it's not that hard. I promise you, if you do it from the beginning, it will make your company 10 times better down the line, okay? So once we've done that, right, the government is going to give us basically a social security number for our business. So now we have an LLC in the state of Arizona and an EIN with the federal government. In theory, you're in business at that point, okay? Now, you need to set up a bank account because you don't want to be using your personal bank account for your company and vice versa. So now that you have your LLC and your EIN, if you have an operating agreement, then you're going to go to the bank and you're going to give them this information, and they're going to open up a bank account for you, okay? It makes it's just as easy as your, setting up a regular bank account. It's just you're doing it for the business, and you have to sign for the business basically that you're going to guarantee it. At that point, I would get a debit card. I would open a credit card if you could, and if you're responsible, excuse me. And I would order checks, okay? Because a lot of times small businesses do not accept debit or credit cards. If they do accept debit or credit cards, they're going to charge you a fee. And then some of them just want to take checks. They definitely, I would say 95% of the businesses we do business with now do not accept cash, which is fine. Okay, I would set up your credit card, a business Venmo, a business Zelle if you have that, okay, because it makes it really easy to send money. And then I would obviously go get a computer. I would set up books, accounting software and stuff like that, because as you start to expense things, you want to know what you expensed it for. If you went to lunch, you got to know that you went to lunch with this company. If you, purchased a trailer, that's a piece of equipment. But if you ended up buying material, you want to know what job that goes to, okay? If you have labor, you want to know what job that goes to. You want to make sure that you're setting these things up, okay? And the next thing, pretty much the last thing you got to do, if you're an employer that is going to have employees, then you need to get a workman's comp policy. It's required by the state of Arizona, and you need to make sure that you have that. And the amount of money that you pay that person is going to be based on the type of job that they have. And I'll give you an example. If you're working at a desk, it is not as liable, right? It's not as dangerous as working on a roof. Okay, roofers have about the highest workman's comp rate, okay, because they have the highest liability, and in the event there's a accident, generally speaking, falling off a roof is going to be more costly than having a paper cut on your finger, okay? So for every dollar that you pay to your employee, there's going to be a percentage of that dollar that you pay that has to go to workman's comp. So if it's $1 and your rate for roofers is 16%, then for every 10 grand, you're paying $1,600 in workman's comp. At the end of the year, they're going to audit you and they're going to collect your money. They're going to collect their money. If you don't have the money, they're going to sue you or they're going to cancel the policy, okay? And then you need to get your liability insurance, okay? If you're a business like this girl that asked me about doing, becoming an event planner, she should have liability insurance in the event that, you know, she sets up, let's say, lights and cameras and one of them falls on somebody or falls on the bride or whatever. Instead of them suing her, they're going to sue the insurance policy, and that insurance policy is going to kick in and defend her. Okay. And if there's a claim, then, and it's a legitimate claim, it's going to pay out. So that's pretty much the last thing. Obviously from there, it's, you know, websites and logos and branding. And I talked about that kind of on some other episodes. And if you want me to talk more about that, I can. And again, some of this stuff it's really boring. Okay. It's really basic, but there's a lot of people that follow me, that reach out to me, that write me and say, hey man, I love your stuff. I'm really scared about starting a business. I don't know how to do it. Right. Or I'm the second man on a crew and my foreman has his own business and I'm at the point now where I want to start my company, but I'm not sure how to do it. Send them this video, especially if they're in Arizona. Send them this video. Pretty much all the corporation commissions across the country are about the same. They've all got a Secretary of States for the most part. If you're a contractor, a lot of them have registrars of contractors, and all the information is going to be relatively similar. And then there's going to be specific tax, you know, reasons you're going to do things and legal reasons you're going to do things, and your bank account's going to be set up a certain way. But if you know, put the time into this, like literally, if you're just like, I think everybody should have an LLC. Like there's so many tax benefits to it. And like, I think I'm probably going to have my CPA on one day. I've got a feeling it's going to be a couple episodes, maybe a long recording, because there's so much crap that her and I have done, my attorney and I have done, my financial, you know, wealth manager and I have done over the last couple of years about separating liability and corporate structure. And like, there's just so much you can do. And it all starts right here. It literally starts with starting a company. Once you do that, you're looking at writing off your cell phone bill. You're looking at writing off, you know, fuel and vehicles and insurances. And what that does is it brings your taxable income down. Okay. You can still have a job, still have a W-2 job working for somebody, but also own a business and get the tax benefits of owning the business. It basically all flows up to you as a person. You've got this income and you've got this income, but you got a lot of expenses over here. Okay. And then you get insurance, and there's just a lot of things that you can do once you own a business. And at that point, the sky's the limit. You might set up a company, you know, that's intended to do consulting. Well, next thing you know, you're doing construction, right? You might try to be an event planner. Next thing you know, you're doing, I don't know, you're a driver for somebody, like a private driver. Like there's so many things that you can do. And as long as you're being responsible with the way that you're tracking your expenses and paying your taxes and doing what you're supposed to do, the sky's the limit. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed it. This was episode 9. Okay. Still got work to do on the studio, right? And hopefully we get an AC unit in here soon because it's pretty freaking hot. It's only going to get hotter. So I appreciate you taking the time to watch. Share this with anybody who's looking to start a business. I will share this document in the notes. I'll even put it on the website so that you guys can go to the Creative Contractor website, and then you can download it from there. And then if you have any questions, just drop me some lines, like, share, comment. Any feedback you have, send me a message on content you want me to share. I'd be greatly, greatly appreciative. So stay safe.